afternoon, Ram Fam, and welcome to the weekly Faculty Spotlight. I'm Zach Carlock, your host here, and I've got a couple of faculty members in here with me today that we're going to talk to. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Ladies, tell us who you are first.
Hi, my name is Koncz, and I am the Assistant Professor of Art History here at Angelo State.
Okay.
I'm Rebekah McMillian. I am an Assistant Professor of History in the Dr. Arnaldo de Leon Department of History here at ASU.
So can we just go by Caroline and Rebecca?
Definitely.
Good, great. Call me Zach. Just don't call me late for dinner because I don't miss a meal ever. That's why I can't afford to eat around here.
No.
So first of all, Caroline, tell us a little bit about who you are. And we know your title and everything, but tell us a little bit about what you do here at ASU.
Yeah, I serve as actually the only art historian here. So if you want to take a class in art history, you're probably going to end up with me. So
I took one of those one time.
Did you?
Years ago.
Oh, it's fun stuff, I think. So I teach, in general, some survey classes that are general education requirements, as well as quite a few upper-level courses.
Okay.
And so I'm happy to be here.
Very cool. Rebecca?
Yeah, like I said, I'm a professor in the history department. I specialize in modern European history, so that kind of broadly includes basically the French Revolution, which is as close to the present as you can get.
Absolutely.
So I teach a variety of modern European history classes. I also teach the U.S. Survey, World History Surveys. So those classes are what I mainly cover. Yeah.
I lived in Germany for 4 years.
Very nice.
I was in the Air Force for 10 years, so I lived in Germany for 4 years, and I learned that Europe is a very interesting continent.
It is.
And I got to see I literally got to visit every European country in my 4 years there because it's so cheap to travel when you're there.
Yes.
It's a lot closer to get to things,
yes.
too.
Yes. I heard a great little phrase one time, and it says, Americans think 100 years is a long time, and Europeans think 100 miles is a long distance.
Yes, they do.
And so it's kind of, we're fascinated by anything because our country, comparatively speaking, is so young compared to European countries. And whereas we think nothing of getting in the car and driving 100 miles, right?
Especially in Texas.
Exactly. And so, we think of it in kind of the same ways. But yes, travel inside Europe is very easy. If you can get over there, that's the big hurdle.
And I was there with the military, and so I got to travel everywhere. I remember we would fly this airline, Ryanair, over there. Mm-hmm. $5 to fly to England, you know, and we literally paid one time a penny to fly to Italy. Now we paid like $25 surcharges, but I mean, $100 to fly round trip,
right?
Not bad.
Come on.
I know.
No, I loved it over there, and one of the things I really got to do to kind of help you out here, Carolyn, on the art side was they had this festival in Berlin. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but there's a lot of art museums in Berlin.
There are, yeah.
There are a lot. And the other thing there are a lot of are jazz bars.
Yeah.
And I love jazz. I'm from South Louisiana. I love jazz. Really? Where from?
Yeah, Kentwood, Louisiana.
Lake Charles.
Okay.
Westlake.
Okay.
Westlake.
All right. Very nice.
So,
a fellow Louisianian.
Yes.
We're all stuck out here in West Texas.
Do you know where I can get some good crawfish?
Not here. Go back to Louisiana. At least get closer to Houston.
I had a guy in Snyder that would bring it in, and I'd just go buy it off him and go boil it at the house. I'm going to have to make trips to Snyder now. Anyway, we went up one year, and we paid like €130, my wife and I each. And we got to hop for like 3 days. We would just hop from museum to museum to museum to museum for free because it was basically an all-access pass. And we got to go to the jazz bars with no cover and all that. You got one free drink at every bar, every visit. So I got to have a lot of the German fare, and we just had a great time over there at that thing. And I saw some artwork that, I didn't realize how much artwork was stolen during the World Wars that is still sitting in these museums and on display, and it really belongs in Yugoslavia or
all
Poland.
over the world.
Yeah.
Even some Russian stuff that I was like, how do you get away with stealing the Russian art? You know?
And our class will be talking some about repatriation. So probably one of the most famous sites that are guilty of this is probably the British Museum in London.
Yeah.
And for the last leg of our tour, we'll be spending 4 or 5 days there. And one of those days will be at the British Museum. So we'll be looking at like the Elgin marbles that technically should be in Athens, Greece.
Yes.
But are still getting fought over in terms of the legislation.
Yeah,
So,
and I never realized all the things that go on with that. Even the Louvre.
Yes.
The Louvre down in
That's
Paris,
right.
there's stuff, and I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's fights over, like, the Mona Lisa.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing's been in the Louvre for, I don't know, ever.
yeah, since pretty much Leonardo da Vinci passed
Yeah.
away. And
Yeah.
apparently in King Francis's The Arms, if you believe the legend.
Right.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He apparently was BFFs with the king.
Wow.
Yeah, and they tell all the stories of all that stuff. So, yeah, I'm not a history major. I'm not an art major. But I know enough to make me a little dangerous in both areas.
Gotcha.
Now, I won't lie to you. When it comes to history, I'm more of an American history. Probably Civil War to current times, like Korea, Vietnam, stuff like that. I enjoy, like, the world history, the war history type
Yeah.
stuff. I read a thing the other day, when you turn 40 as a guy, you're supposed to decide whether or not you want a motorcycle or get into history. I got into history a little
Good choice.
bit.
Yeah. Probably safer.
Safer, exactly.
That's what my wife said, too. She says you'll live longer.
And it's probably less money than the motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's true. Well, I don't know. The guy that the historian that I hung out with all the time, my co-producer or my co-host when I did sports in Snyder, he was an American history teacher. He was a historian, and he's had some pretty expensive taste when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
Like he's got all the books. I'm like, that's $200. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy cow, you're crazy. Well, I guess it's where you spend your money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you had mentioned spending some time in Europe, and that's what we're really here to talk about. Tell us a bit about this program, this European study program.
Yeah, so this coming summer 2024, Caroline and I are going to be leading a study abroad program here at ASU. We're calling it the European Study Program. It'll be about a little over 3 weeks or so, and we're going to start our trip in Rome. We'll go from Rome, we'll go to Florence, and then Florence to Paris, and Paris to London.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty awesome trip.
We need a chaperone to fly for free.
Yeah. We have a really kind of just jam-packed schedule so we can make the most of it, right?
Absolutely.
But we do, one of the things I think one of the strengths of our program is that we are staying about 4 to 5 days in each city.
Wow.
And so sometimes, with study abroad or just travel in general, you're wanting to say, okay, I'm here for 24 hours, I'm just going to move on to the
Sure.
next place, right? Which
Sure.
it definitely can be a tactic. And
From experience, it's not a great one.
yeah, it's a little harder. And so one of the things that we wanted to try and do was not only be able to see all the things that these cities have to offer, because you could probably spend a whole semester in just one location.
In Rome especially, I can tell you.
Yeah. But for us to really kind of allow our students to get immersed in the place for an extended period of time. The other good thing I think we have in our program is a kind of a free day built in each location.
Oh, wow.
So the days that we have scheduled, they're
Wow.
jam-packed, but then there's also a free day built in for students who are like, oh, I really want to go and see this, or we maybe had a little bit of a tease of this place over here. I want to go back and explore that
Sure.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so it gives the students a little bit of autonomy and freedom to really explore Europe on their own, but maybe within the kind of help and safety of saying, okay, I'm still with a group, I'm still organized, I know who's going to kind of get me from point A to point B,
Sure.
but I've got a little freedom to be able to do what it is I want to do.
That is-
So yeah.
I'm going to tell you, that is awesome, because I'm going to tell you, we spent, my wife and I spent a week in Italy, but we only spent 2 days in Rome.
Yeah.
No, it's not
It's
enough.
not enough.
Not even close. Like, I remember my wife going, well, what do you want to see? And I'm like, the Colosseum.
Yeah.
A whole day
Yeah.
in the catacombs and the Colosseum, and then we ended up spending a day in the Vatican doing the catacombs of the Vatican, and
Yeah.
and I, as a Christian man, I got to go see in St. Paul's ashes and St. Peter's ashes and all those things. I was just like,
Yeah.
and you just get goosebumps walking through there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a funny story. I think both of you will enjoy this. So when I was there, I was in the military in Germany, and when I came back, when I was there, the Pope John Paul II was on his last leg of living.
Oh, wow.
So they were already starting to shut things down in the Vatican and
Yeah.
everything. Well, I came back to my station, and my supervisor was about to leave the next week to go to Rome to go see the Vatican.
Yeah.
And Pope John Paul II passed.
Wow.
And he was so mad because he's like, you got to see all that stuff. And now I can go, but I can't see it because the only thing that was open was like where the masses stood.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't go into the catacombs.
Yeah.
You couldn't do anything else.
He got to see a very fascinating
Very
cultural
different side of the
cultural
Vatican.
experience. Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah. And I was kind of jealous of him for that. I mean, I'm not Catholic, but to see, like, I didn't realize the Vatican had their own economy.
Oh yeah,
That's right.
It's
its own
They're a
country.
micro country.
Yeah,
They're a micro nation inside,
Yeah.
and I didn't realize that. You know, because they're so small, you're just like.
Yeah, you
whatever.
would assume it is part of Rome,
Yeah.
right?
And that's exactly what I assumed. Then they still used the lira whenever they were on the.
Huh.
Everyone
Yeah.
else is on the
Yeah.
the
euro. Yeah.
euro.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that term?
Yeah.
And it was really interesting, you know. But I really enjoyed. I wish we'd had a lot more time. I could have spent a week in Rome alone
Mm-hmm.
and still not seen it. I could have spent a week in Versailles.
Yeah.
We have a
In
whole day
Paris.
planned in Versailles.
Not enough.
Yeah.
Not enough.
Not enough. I mean, the hedges alone, like
Yes.
the hedge mazes alone, you can
Yes.
spend a day in and get lost.
Yes.
And we had friends of us that were with us when we went to Versailles, and 2 little girls, and we got lost. They got lost.
It's
Yeah.
easy to do.
It is, and people don't realize, and so we got to go. Well, when we went up, we got to go up above and see it from above, and it was just so phenomenally amazing. And I'm like, one day in Versailles, I could spend 2 weeks in Versailles and still not see it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a whole day in the Louvre is
Yeah.
a good day.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be hitting all of these spots you're mentioning.
But I have to ask. This is one side I have to see if you're visiting in Paris, the Pompidou Center.
That is not on our list.
Oh my gosh! When you get your free day, you need to go see Centre Pompidou.
Okay.
It's named after George Pompidou,
Uh-huh.
which was a former president of France, I believe, at
Prime
some
Minister.
point.
Yeah.
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
There it is. Whatever. I
Yeah.
don't understand all those
You're
terms.
right. You're right. I mean, in terms of the
He was something.
yeah. Uh-huh.
And when it was built, the French hated it because it was so modern, and the French are very not so modern sometimes.
Yeah.
And this was back in the 90s when this occurred. And so, hey, look, I know something the historians didn't know. Yes! But if you get the chance to go see it, like one of the things they have is they have a mall out in the front, and there's mechanical like lips and a mechanical horse that's going up and down, and the lips
interesting.
spitting water. And
Interesting.
it's
I can tell why they didn't care for
yes,
it.
because it's
Yeah.
not French standards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the French didn't like Euro Disney either when it came.
Yes.
They hated it.
Yes.
They didn't want Disney in their country like that. But it made a lot of money.
For sure.
So, so I will say you're hitting 3 of my 4 most favorite cities
Oh wow.
in
Nice.
Europe.
They're good cities, I
Yeah,
think.
I think so.
Rome was my absolute favorite. Paris was my second favorite. I always thought Paris would be my first favorite.
Yeah.
Because being from Louisiana, you learn
Yeah.
to speak French,
Yeah.
and you want to go visit the homeland, so to speak,
Yeah.
even though it was really Canada.
Yeah.
If you know your history, and I'm sure you do. But London was number 4. For me, number 3 was in being in Greece. Period. Getting
yeah.
to go to Greece.
Yeah. We had hoped to maybe work that in on this trip, but the logistics of getting from Greece to Italy just made it to where it was
Yeah.
not feasible for this trip. But we have hopes maybe for a future trip to
Yeah,
include
Greece was a separate
Greece.
trip for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
But we loved going to see the Parthenon and
Oh,
all
yes.
this stuff in Greece and.
There's nothing
down in
better-
Athens.
Nothing better than experiencing these places.
Experiencing the culture.
Yeah, and there's a quote that's something like travel is one of the best forms of education, right? In so many different
absolutely.
ways, but this is kind of experiential learning, which is what I think our goal is for study abroad and trying to encourage students to be able to do. And it's hard. I know myself, and I believe Caroline as well. I did a whole semester of study abroad in college,
Yeah.
and that was wonderful, and it worked for me. And it was something, like I said, I was a history major, so it was something that was really important for me to do. And
Absolutely.
we realized that a lot of students can't do that, right? A whole semester.
It gets to be a financial burden.
Yeah,
for
it's
some.
a financial burden, or just their logistics of, you're in college to get a degree and then be able to get a job. You
Yeah.
kind of are on a plan. A lot of students are. And so,
How do you go to mom and dad and go, I'm
yeah.
going to take a semester off and go to Europe,
yeah.
but I'm going to still be in college?
Yeah.
Mom and Dad don't want to buy that.
Yeah, so this is a way of kind of hopefully bridging those two things. So like a desire to see and experience and learn and expand your horizons, and then at the same time still fit it into your schedule. I mean, we are offering course credit for this. You know, there's things that students can do to be able to make it beneficial for them in all different kinds of ways.
Okay. So you mentioned the course credit. What kind of course credit is offered in this program? What is that?
Well, we are offering up to 6 hours of course credit, and I believe they're both titled 4381 in the books.
Is that like a special interest?
Yeah, special topics, yeah. So it's an art special topics and a history special topics.
That's really cool, especially if someone is an art major or a history major. That's,
and
of course,
really cool.
You know,
and the experience alone.
Yeah, and while, you know, if you are an art major or history major, this may be immediately relevant to your degree plan, but we're open to all majors.
Yes.
And so students can, you know, we'll work with students on figuring out how we can make it work for your degree plan, maybe some elective credit, or substitutions even for your degree plan. We're willing to work with students. If they want to come, we're willing to help them make it happen. So.
Awesome. Well, you covered my next question. Where all are you going to go with the Paris, London, and Rome? So we're going to replace that question. We're going to do a little on the fly here. Unplanned. We're going to go to you, Carolyn.
Okay.
So what are some of the possible museums you're looking forward to being able to see and discuss with these students?
Like the most?
Sure, let's go the top one in each city.
Okay. In Rome, I think it's got to be the Vatican Museum, in terms of their collection. They have pretty much anything in pre-modern art you can think of, including like Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo, getting to see that.
I'm going to tell you, when I saw that and I looked, the first time I ever looked, I was just like, I'm thinking, this guy, how long did he lay there and paint that?
4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
Wow.
And I'm like, I mean, I'd love to lay down for 4 years.
Oh yeah, he wrote poetry actually about how difficult it was to essentially be like leaning back, you know, on his back, trying to paint with his stomach all puffed out, his head's to the side, and he basically painted the entire thing himself. He had essentially assistants that were maybe mixing the pigments together, but everything on the wall, on the ceiling, he frescoed himself.
And the detail for the time frame, like the tiny details that are in that is just, it really is just so awe-inspiring when you see it.
Yeah.
It really is. I can see why that would be your favorite.
Yeah, definitely. So we're next going to Florence, so staying in Italy. Oh, a favorite museum there would probably be the Uffizi Gallery.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, they probably have the strongest collection of Italian Renaissance art in the world.
Oh, wow.
So if you've heard of like Botticelli's Birth of Venus or Primavera, the Spring.
Oh yes.
Some famous paintings by like Michelangelo are also there. Titian's Venus of Urbino also.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like the blockbuster location.
Wow. Yeah, when we were in Florence, I was more worried about food.
Yeah, that's fair.
I ate really well in Florence.
That's easy to do.
Yeah.
I have a list of restaurants that I'm planning on revisiting.
I remember in Florence, we found a little back road restaurant, a little mom and pop shop, and my daughter was, I guess she was 5 at the time, and she's now 22. That's how long ago this was. And they did the whole throw in the dough stuff, you know. And they came out and brought a little small dough ball for her and let her learn to throw the dough at 5 years old. And I'm like, and I couldn't do it. I never could figure it out.
Yeah.
My 5-year-old was like, look. And, I mean, the pizza was like this big, but she's
it's impressive.
Well, with that, we're actually going to be doing a cooking class in Florence.
Yep.
The menu.
I chose the right topic.
Yeah, we're going to go to the local market and we buy all the food, and then we are going back to like a cooking class, and they'll kind of guide us in making. I think the menu that we chose was like a bruschetta, and then your own pasta dish, and then we'll finish with tiramisu. So I won't take. We'll go back to the museums, but when you mentioned food in Florence, I had to kind of include that we will. That is part of one of our excursions.
I think I need to enroll in the spring. Okay, so you got Florence. Now, where are you going next?
Paris,
Yes.
and that might be a toss-up actually between the Louvre.
See, for me, Paris is it's the Louvre.
Yeah. Well, I would count Versailles as also.
Okay, and I'll give you that.
Destination.
And that if you're counting Versailles as a museum destination, which when you think, I guess it is.
I would say it's
especially
a
the
museum
throne room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be tough. That'd be a tough call between the two. Although I will tell you, the Louvre is spectacular. You know, and it's huge.
It is quite
It's
large.
like it's like the Smithsonian of Europe, almost.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is, and there's so many things that are there.
Yeah.
You know,
It was
and-
initially built as a palace, which is why
Yes.
it was so large, which
Right.
makes sense.
Speaking of palaces, you're going to get to see any castles while you're there in Europe?
Castles. I'm not sure we're gonna have to see. We're gonna see any specific castles. Of course, the Versailles, the palace.
Right.
Of course, a castle is a different structure than a palace.
Sure.
So we're getting on semantics, I guess.
Well,
But
touche.
yeah, we will go to in London. We'll be at the Tower of London, which is
Okay,
Yeah,
that
kind of
counts.
the closest.
Yes,
We'll take it. That
So,
counts.
but again, on the free day, people could take a short day trip to Windsor Castle if they wanted
Yes.
to in London. So that is a
Absolutely.
possibility.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, now so you're trot into England. What are you looking forward to there?
Oh,
There's a lot to choose from in
there
England.
is. I mean, as an art historian, I'm probably most interested in going to the National Gallery,
Sure.
which is where probably the strongest collection of like early modern Renaissance paintings are.
Okay.
I have a very focused niche interest,
That's
so
okay. That's okay. That is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I will tell you my favorite artist is, I'm kind of cheesy, I'm kind of simple. I'm a Claude Monet guy.
yeah.
I love Claude Monet. I know I could never afford a real Monet because no one can.
Yeah.
But I do love Claude Monet as far as artists go. That's my favorite. But I really, you know, all these places you're talking about, I'm sitting here thinking, with the exception of Florence, I've been to them and they are phenomenal. And the experience I know the students can have is some of them may never have a chance like that again,
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
you know?
You had to do these, on-site study to experience these. I mean, because this is an educational tour.
Absolutely.
That their part of this is going to be focused on thinking about these places as historical spaces, cultural spaces, how we've preserved them, right? What we remember about them, that kind of thing, and so it really just takes the learning into a different level when we're doing it on the ground versus just reading about it in a book or hearing
Sure.
about it in a lecture. And I think one of the great things about, again, this type of program is that we handle all the logistics. We do all that
You just
hard work.
show up.
Students just
Right.
show up, and they show up and they get ready to learn and experience
Now,
it.
you haven't said anything about my favorite place ever in France, the Eiffel Tower. Tell me you got at least a day to go see that.
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely.
was about to say, you can't have a trip to Paris without seeing La Tour Eiffel.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
We'll have that
okay.
planned, and we'll also talk about with students the history around the Eiffel Tower. It's this great symbol of modernity in the late 19th century. Right, it's built
Yeah.
for a World's Fair.
It was.
The Parisians hated it. They absolutely
With a
hated
passion.
it.
Still,
yeah.
some of them still do.
Yeah.
They still do.
Some of that culture is still there in the older generation.
Yeah, of course. I think many of them have embraced it because of just its iconic nature and also
Sure.
the lucrative
Well, a
amount
lot
of
of
money it brings in.
I feel like a lot of the younger generation, like my generation of Parisians, have really embraced it. But like your older generations that are let's be honest, starting to die out at this point, they still.
Yeah, there's some hesitancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so students will be able to go see that. We have in Paris, I'm trying to think of our other itinerary. We're going to go to the catacombs in Paris,
Yes.
so
Oh,
the
yeah.
underground catacombs.
That's one thing I regret I never got to go see was the catacombs.
Yeah, they're kind of equally
I was too
amazing and
creeped out.
spooky. Yeah, at
Yeah.
the same time.
And it was funny because later we went to Rome after our trip to Paris, and I went to the catacombs in Vatican City and all that. But I was creeped out by the ones in Paris, and I don't know why. I just
Yeah.
couldn't. I just heard so many creepy stories about it. Like it's scary, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely something we'll do during the daytime, not at night. Definitely would not. I'm sure they probably have tours just because people would pay
Yeah.
money to go do that
Sure.
at nighttime. But no, we're gonna
what about
stick
Painter's
to
Square?
Oh, I don't know if we have that officially in our schedule
It's
or
right
not.
by the Louvre.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah. So,
Maybe a free day.
Yeah. Well, and of course, coming and goings and, our days that I would say we have scheduled, they're not like, it's not like a schedule,
Rigid.
it's rigid.
Yeah.
We'll have usually, I think most days, we usually have a thing planned in the morning and then a big thing planned in the afternoon. So people's evenings are free. And then, so there's nothing is, I would say, so strict that we're like, moving at just
Sure.
a really
Run,
hard,
run, run, run.
yeah.
Maybe a little bit of that.
Yeah. Depending upon what's going on. But I
Yeah.
think how we've structured it, it should be.
I can imagine in Versailles you kind of have that little bit of rigidity because it's so large that you've got certain things you want to see, and and Versailles you're gonna walk. Man.
Yeah.
You got to put your walking shoes on.
Yeah. Well,
You're
we've
gonna walk.
planned it to where, because we'll spend the full day there, and we've organized to get a picnic lunch in the gardens, and so
Lunch in the gardens.
we'll just hope that it's the weather holds out for us. It should hopefully be nice, and we can eat in the gardens and spend the day exploring. So
I always love the weather in Paris. I don't think anytime I went to Paris, like 4 times because it was just 4 hours away for us where we were, and never had a rainy day when we were in Paris.
Oh wow, you're lucky.
That's nice.
We were, and now I can't tell you that we didn't try to make sure it wasn't going to rain. We kind of watched some forecasts, and now in London, the whole different story.
Oh,
I don't think
yeah.
we had a
Can't
dry
skip
day
that.
in London.
I've had some of the most beautiful weather in London.
Really?
Yeah, I've got
Really?
very lucky. Yeah.
I think the only day I remember having a dry day was the day we went to the Globe Theater,
Oh.
and I think that's the only dry day we had. And it's like, great, the day I want. I don't care if it rains. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Go figure.
That's okay though.
Yeah.
So, well, man, y'all are starting to cover. Y'all are killing it. When is this going to take place? When are y'all traveling, and what are some deadlines you may have?
Yeah.
Things like that.
So we leave. The current schedule is us leaving the day after graduation. So
Pretty quick.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but even students who are graduating in May can still attend. They can still participate.
Okay.
So they'll walk in May and kind of observe that graduation, and then they kind of take the study abroad really as their last classes. And so while they've walked and they've really finished almost everything that they need for their degree in May or by May, they kind of officially finish things off by coming back or going
Right.
on the study abroad.
Sure.
So they can still go too if they're interested. So even if you're getting close to graduating, don't
Come
don't
on.
yeah,
Don't let that,
or maybe
don't let
think of it
graduation
as
scare you off.
yeah, or maybe
Maybe a
think
nice
of,
graduation
exactly a
present,
great
you know?
graduation gift, right?
Senior trip.
Exactly. The application for our program is currently open, so the application stays open till December the 1st. And so we can take at max 20 people.
That was going to be my
on the
next
tree-
question. Is
yeah.
there a max number?
Yeah, 20 people. And so we're currently at 9.
Okay, you got a
so
few slots.
we got a few slots left, so about half full, which we're excited about. And so if students are interested, definitely, go ahead and get that application
Now,
in.
on that, is it going to be like a first come, first serve, or is there, like, if you get set 25, but you got like 3 or 4 that really don't need the credits? I mean, is there any, or is it just first come, first serve?
To some degree.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we'll privilege those who turned it in earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. And
That's
I would
fair.
say if we have got a graduating senior versus maybe somebody who has less hours or something, we would consider, like, depending on if they've gotten their applications in around the same time,
Sure.
we would give preference to somebody who's about to finish and they wouldn't have an opportunity for another
Sure.
study abroad experience another summer.
Extenuating
but
circumstance.
yeah, that kind of thing. But I would most likely it's going to be first come, first serve. So.
Now, here's the biggest question. Is this an every year thing, or is this just an every so often, or?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to make it, at least I would like to make it as every summer as we can, maybe every
Sure.
other summer, if not every
At
summer.
least.
Yeah. And so that's the goal, is to kind of, then
I
we
mean,
can,
it wouldn't bother me to go to Paris every year.
No,
It
right,
wouldn't bother
yeah.
me at all.
and maybe we, switch up the itinerary a little bit,
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
just to kind of keep things fresh. I know I have a real desire to include Munich in our itinerary, just because there's so much we can do there, but and it kind of fits nice geographically with where we're going.
Sure does.
We had to cut it out this go round, but so we might adjust the itinerary a little bit, but I think the goal maybe in the long run is to run it, if not every year, every other year or something like that.
Now, is this sponsored by any particular organization on campus, or is it just does it have to be like, how am I saying? Maybe I'm saying this wrong. It's the history department and the art department, so it would be that way going forward too, is what I'm asking.
I mean, we're going to be the ones leading the trip,
Yeah.
and that's our representative departments. But beyond
Yes,
that,
there it is,
Yeah.
representative departments.
Yeah, and
There
of
we
course
go.
the Center for International Studies, ASU Center for International Studies, they're the ones
Okay.
that house all the study abroad programs.
Okay.
And so kind of a lot of the work and the application and the processes go through that office. with us as the co-directors, but through that office, through the the
Okay.
paper trail, that kind of thing.
And you have to pardon me. I've been in San Angelo all of like 7 weeks, so
Oh.
I don't know everything about everything
Okay,
on
there
campus
you
yet.
go.
I'm still learning.
Okay.
I didn't even know. I assumed we might have had something with international studies or
Yeah.
programs, but
Hmm.
and where can people go to apply for the program?
So they can go into the Center for International Studies. They have one of their links will be study abroad programs, and then you'll see the list, and you'll see ours listed there called European Study Program. They just click that
Okay.
link, and it will take them. Students can also log on to Ramport, and I believe find the study abroad link through Ramport
Okay.
as well. So you can kind of get there either direction. But
Okay,
yeah.
great.
I feel like
Now-
we also have posters.
Oh, we do.
You
We have
do.
posters.
That's how we found out about y'all.
Oh,
We
good.
saw a
Yay,
poster.
it's paying off.
Yeah, we saw a poster and we're like, hey, why don't we interview these people?
Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
QR code on
And,
the poster that will take you straight to
The application.
the application.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
the easiest way if you find
Yeah.
a poster. Just
Yeah.
take your
It-
phone and
use the QR
scan the
code
QR
Awesome.
and scan it.
So, okay, now we talked about your favorite art places.
Sure.
We're gonna put her on the spot. Now. We're
I
gonna
think
put
that's
Rebekah on the spot. She's throwing you right under the bus. There's
Yeah.
the bus. Here it comes. So, historical places. What are you most looking forward to, say, in Rome?
Oh, gosh, that's
And
hard to.
there's
Yeah,
a bunch.
I know. Probably, I mean, I hate to say, like, it sounds so obvious, but the Colosseum. I mean, just to see it.
That is pretty obvious.
Yeah, yeah, literally and figuratively. Yeah, the Colosseum. Maybe tie with the Roman Forum. Maybe kind of loop
Yeah.
those together.
I tell you, when I learned about the Colosseum and how they would flood it and all the
Mhm.
things
the
they would
naval
do,
battles.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, this is, and I had heard about it before I went, and I'm like, it can't be that big. There's no way.
Mm,
And then you get there and you're like, this place is huge.
yeah.
And then you start realizing that, yeah, they could.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy. I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, that would probably be my choice in Rome. In Florence, oh gosh, I'm excited about seeing Michelangelo's David. I've seen it before, but seen it again. But particularly, I'm excited to show students kind of the role that Florence plays in the Renaissance and
Yes.
kind of making its claim as this major, power within these Italian city-states, and kind of
Mhm.
showing how the geography of the city and its art kind of reflects its power. So that'll be kind of fun to do. And Paris, oh, gosh, it's
That's
so
another one
hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And it's really
I'm trying
just-
to think about things that you haven't mentioned.
Different
so like
ones.
different
Yeah,
ones.
I know. I already picked the good ones.
I know. Of course, Notre Dame. Ever since the fire, it's
Oh,
closed,
wow.
so we
Yeah.
can't. We can stand on the outside, so we'll definitely see the outside of it. But
I didn't realize it was still closed.
yeah, this will
Wow.
be at least for a good little while. I heard that they were maybe trying to get it open before the Olympics this summer, but I don't think that's going to happen. So,
San Chapello
yeah,
we will
yes,
go to.
we will go to, which is
Okay.
right close by, and we actually have plans to go to a concert in Saint Chapelle,
Oh, wow.
an evening concert. So
Wow.
that's one of the evening activities we do have planned. And they have these amazing classical concerts, and these cathedrals. Their architecture is just so
The sound
perfectly
is
suited.
so
Yes,
vibrant.
so
Yes.
it'll be one of the great experiences there. We're gonna take a walking tour of in Paris of Montmartre. So this kind of
Yeah.
art area, historically a very much an art area where artists and things like this were
Sure.
living, and we'll see the Sacré-Cœur, and we'll see the cultural battles that took place in this part of the city around the late 19th century about kind of modernity and wanting to embrace modernity versus those who are wanting to kind of keep France in what would have been like this kind of more conservative past, right?
Right,
So we'll
right.
kind of use our walking tour to help us see that, which I think will be kind of a cool experience. And then in London, oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite cities in the world, so it's so hard to choose. Oh gosh, probably I want to say the Tower of London, just because there's such great things there.
For me, it was the Globe Theater. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I love theater and things like that. I'm not a theater guy, but I love going
Yeah.
to the theater. Like I love going to Broadway and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So for me, and I love Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
So to go see where all these
Yeah.
plays were acted in the I got to see the site of the original Globe Theater.
Yeah.
Of course, the new
The-
Globe is
yeah.
in a
Right.
different spot. But
Yeah.
just to see it was just like
Yeah.
it's just inspiring.
Well, I'll choose. I'll go way more modern than anything we've talked about so far, and that is the Churchill War Rooms.
Oh wow!
Okay, so that kind of brings us into full circle of what we're going to see, going from all the way to the ancient world to this is of course World War II. This is right near number 10 Downing Street, so where the Prime Minister's, you know, where he lives and works and everything. And it was an underground bunker, basically, where Churchill led the British High Command in the midst of World War II, particularly during the Blitz over London. And so there, it was virtually untouched for decades and decades after the war was over. When they did find it and they wanted to turn it into a museum, things had been so untouched that one of the little fun pieces of it is that in some of the drawers of the desks, the sugar ration for one of the military officers are still in the drawer, in the drawer, right? Because they rationed all the food and things like sugar and all that stuff. And so his military sugar ration was still in the drawer. I mean, that's how like untouched it was. And so they've kind of turned it into this walkable museum that you could go through and see this and experience it. Now, Churchill hated the bunker. He never wanted to be down in it. I think he only spent maybe 1 or 2 nights. I mean, or I could be wrong about the number, but it's a very few number of nights down there. He didn't really like it. But that was very much where the
there were actually some. Now I'm a Doctor Who fan. I'm gonna kind of show my nerd side. But there were some actually Doctor Who episodes where they simulated the bunkers in some of the episodes.
Okay, nice.
And they supposedly pretty accurate setup of when they staged it to what was actually down there. And as a communications person, as a communications guy, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, you know, the fact is Churchill was one of the greatest orators of all time, certainly of his time. And I use Churchill as an example because one of the things Churchill talked about is, you know, a lot of students in like public speaking classes and stuff, they want to memorize their speech so they get everything right. And I'm like, don't do that. And I'm like, Churchill, one of the things he talked about later in his life was that he tried memorizing his speech when he was young and went to go give the speech and forgot half of it. And he was so embarrassed that he never memorized a speech again. And he would talk about how when he would practice speeches, he'd practice a speech 100 times and do it 100 different ways. But he always felt like he got it right when it came time, if he was before Parliament or speaking to the country or whatever, that he felt like he got it right. And so I use that to emphasize the power of practicing your speaking. And don't be too hard on yourself. You're going to make mistakes. And don't memorize, because if Churchill couldn't memorize, you shouldn't memorize either.
Right.
That's fair.
That's a good piece of
advice. And he really was one of the great orators of our time. And so I would have, that's something I've never seen. But I would have, man, that sounds amazing. I'd love to see that.
So like I said, our trip really covers the full gamut of European history and culture
You're really
and
covering
art.
a lot.
So
if you had to guess, between the two, how many years of art and history are you truly probably covering? Let me rephrase that. How many hundreds of years?
Well, probably thousands.
Thousands.
Close,
certainly.
With the Roman
definitely.
Because we're starting out in Rome with the
so you're
four.
BC for some of that.
We're really going about 2,000 years of history.
That's a lot of history.
It is. It is.
3 weeks.
Yeah, it is. Wow. And there'll be a little, the programs do have a little, like what we would kind of call a preparatory class in the spring. It's not a full 3-hour spring course or anything, but there's some preparatory meetings and readings just to help people familiarize, especially if they're not a history major or an art major and they don't really know why these places are significant, or they have just a general context of them, but not the what we want them to kind of walk away with. We'll kind of help prep students so they can
get a good reason to have that December 1st deadline.
That's right.
Exactly.
So that they can kind of feel like, okay, like I know what I'm looking at. I know what I'm going to be experiencing and seeing. Because if you know that, you'll enjoy it a lot more.
So if someone's thinking about doing this, but they're just a little scared because of the money side of it, what are they able to do? Like, is there scholarship for it? Is it regular tuition? Is it a separate fee? What is there? How does that work?
I know there are some scholarships available. The Center for International Studies, I believe, gives scholarships to students who apply. If you are an art or history major, I know that we will also offer scholarships. Otherwise, we're happy to work, like if you are in a different major perhaps, and I could reach out to the chair of the department and see if we could try and get some funds.
And we also, students are eligible to apply their current scholarships that they have to this to the program.
program,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, especially because there's kind of two components. There's the cost of the trip itself, right? For our hotels and air travel and all
Sure.
those kinds of logistical things, and then there's like the tuition for your hours. And so, if you have a scholarship that applies to your tuition, it would go towards that because these are
Right.
run through the tuition on like a summer course. So it's just like you were taking a summer class,
Okay.
right? So that component of it could be covered by your scholarship money for your tuition
Okay.
that you can apply to that.
So it's not like you're going to go to someone and go, oh, you're going to have to pay $15,000, and
no.
No.
because some people don't have the reality of what the thought is, and that's
Yeah.
their thought is, there's no way I can afford something like this. It's
Mhm.
the whole too good to be true thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep it as economical as possible. That's one of the reasons that we hope we can get as many students as possible to go, because
Sure.
the more that we can get to go, the better the price it will be, right?
Right.
The numbers just help out in that regard.
And it validates being able to do it in years to come.
Yes, exactly.
exactly.
And so that's one element of it, is that we hope to fill that out. And then also that if you were to do this on your own and all the locations because
Lot
all
of
of our accommodations are in hotels, and they include like breakfast every morning. So
Right.
we've chosen places that have that. So that meal in
And
itself.
you have lunch on the ground.
Yeah, right. A couple of places like we have lunches
Yeah.
built in or dinners built in. That those are you probably would not be able to pay a trip out of pocket for all these
Right.
things in these
Mhm.
locations for this price. So there is something that benefits going with a group, and that
Sure.
it does become more affordable that way.
I mean, maybe if you're Elon Musk, you can do that.
well,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, right. But who is? None of us
I'm
are.
not. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
Actually, there's only one of those.
Yeah,
That's enough.
yeah.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough in the world. So I'm trying to think now. I'm kind of gotten through everything. Is there anything you can think of? Oh, goodness gracious! Anything you can think of? Maybe we didn't cover. Maybe we missed that we want to make sure we get highlighted.
Oh, Rebecca, I think you should talk about the Jack the Ripper walking tour.
Oh, yeah.
That's
oh,
a
you have a
highlight.
Jack the Ripper
Yeah.
walking tour? Are you
Yes.
kidding me?
Yes. So in London, we have planned a Jack the Ripper walking tour, and what that
Our
will.
camera lady's really excited
Yeah.
about this.
Oh.
I hope you're planning on coming with us.
Yeah, right.
She might be now. She might be thinking about it now.
I hope so. So what the plan is that we will take a walking tour. We're going to start and kind of trace the different locations where each of Jack the
Wow.
Ripper's victims were killed. And we're not doing it just because, let's, go morbidly look at where these people were murdered.
This was a big part of London's history.
It was,
Yeah.
and that's really what we're going to be talking about, is kind of how the person of Jack the Ripper, whoever he was, but really just the context in which these people die, reflect a time of kind of mass urbanization, industrialization, socioeconomic differences. I mean, all of these women were, prostitutes, or they were having, they were lower class women who were
Yeah.
struggling to get by, struggling to survive.
Yep.
And just the class dynamics of all of that, the gender dynamics of that. And so we'll use the story of these victims
Right.
and this murderer as a way of trying to understand London in the late 19th century is really the goal. So it's one of my, sounds really morbidly to say, is my favorite things to do, but it really is. You just get such an interesting perspective on understanding the story more than just
No, absolutely.
this serial killer, whatever.
So, my ex-wife was a very big Jack the Ripper. She was more of a forensics type person and loved the stories and kind of studied that a little bit. And I know that a lot of people out there, a lot of historians have their different beliefs of who it might
may have
be.
been, yeah.
Do you have your own personal belief?
Yeah, so I've done a little bit of investigation on who
Sure.
the different supposed people are. One of the most compelling arguments I've heard is that it was potentially a sailor who had been docked, because each of the so of course London on the Thames River, right, would have these
Sure.
these ships coming in, these merchant ships coming in and whatever. And of course we're at this height of industrialization where trade is around the world is at an all-time high.
And in London, it was big.
Yeah, and so there's one association that's possible that he was a sailor on one of these ships, one of these merchant ships, and docked for a period. And that's why whenever he would leave, they couldn't find any trace of who he was or things
Right,
like
'cause he was
that.
always in and out.
Yeah, so I found that to be a compelling argument.
Very interesting.
It's also I've heard a little bit of compelling argument that it's possible it could have been multiple people, like it wasn't just one person. So there's lots of interesting theories behind it, which we'll talk about, right? We'll
Sure.
kind of do that. We'll also talk about the women themselves and
Sure.
kind of give them their due diligence, because so much of it is focused on Jack the Ripper, which I
Right.
understand why, but also these women had lives, and so why
Absolutely.
why did they find themselves in the place or the reason or what happened to become victims, right?
Yeah. And one of the so I've done again, I've read a little bit, again, enough to make me dangerous. But like one of the theory of I never believed the multiple persons theory simply because everything seems so strategic as far as the cuts and the way the women were cut up and stuff like that. Like I've heard the theory of that it may have been some type of physician or surgeon.
Like a barber.
Yes, like a barber.
Yeah,
Something like
and
yeah.
someone who was
Todd.
very
Yeah.
meticulous with the cuts.
Yes.
And because all of them were the same way, the whole multiple persons never really rang true with me.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I've read the ridiculous theories like it was aliens that
Oh
came
yeah,
in
or
and
was it
found us.
Prince Albert?
Yes.
Yeah, like
Oh,
that's
Lord.
really
Yeah, like the really
yeah,
ridiculous theories
yeah,
that always just crack
and we'll
me
talk
up.
a little bit of those too. But yeah, and what's interesting is that most of the places where these women were found, you can still go to and
Sure.
see. I mean, some of them are like in the middle of like a high rise, like
Yeah.
their little courtyard or something.
Yeah.
Like it's not, you would think, but obviously it looks very different. But one of the cool things that we'll go to is we'll enter into this little street that's really this preserved street. Not so much where somebody died, but it shows you how just compact the city was
Right.
at the time.
Right.
And so you can see how things are just really on top of each other and how close people were living, but also the kind of maze that the city was in some of these places. And so anyway, it just helps to give a different perspective of the
Sure.
city. And
A lot of
anyway.
historical value
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So I'm excited about it. It's one of the things I'm looking forward to the most. And students who maybe say, "Oh, I like true crime or whatever." This is the original true crime.
It is.
It's the OG
It's
true
the original
crime.
cold case. Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe that will entice some people to join and to come
That
on.
just sounds.
That will do.
I'm not gonna lie. That just sounds amazing. And I'm not a forensics person. Like I like forensic speech, like the debate and stuff like that. But I'm not a blood and gut. Like I don't. I see blood on my hand and I pass out.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
I'm that guy.
Yeah.
And I'm better at it since my military time. But I like some cold cases, but I love the history behind the whole Jack the Ripper thing because there's so much, and it gets so deep when you start looking at all the different possibilities and you're like, okay, I can see where this could be the
Yeah.
case, and I can see where this can be the case, and I don't agree with this, but I get it, but
Yeah.
and that's kind of how the multiple persons theory works for me. I'm like, I get where you're coming from, but this one thing just doesn't line up for me to be the multiple persons theory.
Yeah.
But I always thought the Prince Albert theory was so hilarious.
Oh yeah. That's yeah.
I'm just like, are you kidding? Or the aliens one. That's the
Oh,
one I love.
gosh.
Like,
That's,
it's aliens
yeah.
came down and just they pulled the body, they subdued them, and then they dropped the bodies in random places. And I'm like, okay, now we're just fishing here.
Yeah, well, and also to kind of talk about, modern or communications is that part of this is also has a lot to do with the newspapers and how they get covered at the time, and how that information is circulated has a lot to do with the knowledge of who Jack the Ripper was and like
Right.
potentially either I won't say aiding him, but aiding the mystery around him, right? And so there's also kind of a study on, how communication in mass media shaped the story that we remember
Right.
about Jack the Ripper, as well as, thinking about, his the possibility of as to, who he was, but thinking about, again, like I said, who these women were,
Yeah.
and their stories as well.
Yeah, it really, that one really is an amazing story, and I think your students are going to just learn
Hopefully so.
Yeah, I think so.
a ton.
Yeah.
Even if they only pay attention to that one thing.
Oh gosh.
I mean, I'm just saying. I don't want them to. If you're taking this trip, pay attention to it all, please. But even if that's just that one thing, it's so much that's there when you're talking about, like you said, class status, social status, the gender, disassociation, things like that. There's just so much there that's so deep.
Yeah.
With the forensics and the forensics of the time, how they certainly didn't have what we have now.
Right.
Now, okay, I'm going to ask this question. I wasn't going to ask, but you think Jack the Ripper would have been caught today's time?
Well, probably just because of between the forensic knowledge that we have, as well as like cameras, right?
Sure.
Yeah, with surveilled.
Yes, surveillance cameras, things like that.
DNA.
Yeah. Again,
I was thinking the DNA would have got him caught.
Yeah, the forensics in and of themselves of like DNA would have probably got him caught. But yeah.
But it's amazing to think that in that time, just because of the simple things that they didn't have that we take for granted today.
Yeah, and again, I feel like I'm a broken record, but again, these women's lives were not ones of, at the time, did not seem of very much value.
Right, it weren't
and
important
so
to
a lot of
society.
times these women would be seen as, well, they deserved it because they were prostitutes.
Yeah, one less
The
woman
Scarlet
on the
Letter-
street.
the
It's one
Scarlet
less,
Letter kind of
yeah,
thing.
like it's just their value didn't demand
Yeah.
for as much of an intensity.
But human life is human life.
Exactly.
And that's how I see things.
Absolutely. Of course, that's how we see it now. But you
Sure.
know, which is another great kind of historical concept
And
to
cultural
explore.
change through the years.
Yeah, is to talk about, well, why did this not incur the same amount? I mean, there's more fascination on catching him and who he was, and the fact that he had escaped capture from the police, more so than it was about justice for these women.
Oh.
Right. So that's really cool. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, I'm really excited for these students to get to go because, and I'm not going to lie, I'm jealous. I loved Rome. I loved Paris. I liked Florence. I ate a lot in Florence. I was very stuffed when I left Florence. We did see David, the statue of David, which was just simply amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
big.
actually saw several different in my time in Europe. I got to see one in Heidelberg Castle. There's a statue of David laying down that was, I don't know where it came from, but it was a gorgeous sculpture.
By a different artist?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
There were lots of Davids carved
No,
back
there
in the
were.
day,
And
so
this was one he was kind of just laying down, and it was in the courtyard of the Heidelberg Castle there in Germany.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. You ever heard the story of the Heidelberg Castle?
Yes,
Like the
yeah,
big casks,
yes,
wines, and the
The
king that died.
largest cask of wine I think in the world.
Yeah.
wow.
And so the king he only drank wine every day. That's what he would have. Well, they went through an early frost that killed all the grapes, and so they had to go and substitute water. And the theory was by giving the king water instead of wine, his blood was so thin when they gave him water, had a heart attack.
Oh boy.
And they tell that story in there when you listen to it. And
Yeah.
Heidelberg Castle is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We went, it was snowing.
Oh yeah.
And, you got to walk up.
Yeah.
Don't ever try that.
Mm.
I'd take 8 steps, slide back 3. Take 8 more steps, slide back 3. And I was trying to carry my daughter at the same time. She was 5 and had friends with us, and the girls were wearing princess dresses because they were princesses in the castle.
Of course.
But we had a lot of fun there. But Heidelberg Castle, you're right. It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous castle. We had a lot of fun there. But I'm really excited for the students to get to go on this trip. I'm really jealous of them.
Oh.
I really am. I'm really jealous for you ladies that get to take this trip with them and do something that you love to do and teach students. And obviously you love to teach students as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You obviously have a love for history and a love for art and very knowledgeable on both. I'm impressed. Not that I didn't think you didn't. I would hope so.
You're right.
You both have PhDs, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, right?
that's
right.
I would hope you love what you do.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if you didn't. But
Well, I'll say that studying abroad was the best decision I ever made in
Yeah.
college, hands
Same.
down, full stop.
It's the one thing I regretted.
It just changed my life, and obviously, it really shaped helping me understand what I wanted to do with my life. But it
Yeah.
also just gave me a perspective of different cultures, different ways that people live, different histories than I
Yeah.
was really aware of, and it's never a bad choice to study abroad.
No, I
and
agree.
so-
When I went back from undergrad, I went back to college at 30 years old,
Mhm.
and so I wasn't your traditional student. So study abroad wasn't really an option for me, and so I wish it had been. If I had still been single and didn't have kids at the time, it would have probably been a different story for me. I probably would have done it, but it wasn't an option for me. And I kind of my study abroad was in my military time, you know, and I tell people I got to step on all 7 continents of this earth, and there's not a lot of people that can say that, and so. I felt like I had my own study abroad, and I always tell people, and I even tell my daughters even today, if you get the chance to travel, take it. Don't say no. It's just money.
Yeah.
That's
know?
true.
Money I can make more of. You can't make experiences that you don't get the
Yeah.
opportunity to take.
That's right.
And doing it younger, I think, is really beneficial too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine trying to do it now. I can't hardly walk some days. I'd never make it through Versailles today. And my wife will ask me, where do you want, because I want to take my wife to Versailles one day. And I don't know if I could walk Versailles now.
Yeah, students will
just don't.
definitely need to wear their
Yeah,
walking
we'll have
friendly
good
shoes.
shoes and prepare themselves to be able to walk probably a couple miles a day.
At least.
Yeah. So
But that means you get to eat pretty much anything
It's all
you
right.
want.
Oh, yeah,
It all balances out.
Look, enjoy the food. You're not going to get fat. You're going to walk it off, I promise.
That's right. Uh-huh.
In some cases, you're going to run it off. But no, it's absolutely, sounds like a phenomenal trip. Sounds like a phenomenal opportunity for students. Kind of wish you had more than 20 slots. I mean,
Well, if it comes to that, we will reevaluate. But right now, we're hoping just to get to our 20,
Right.
Sure.
And hopefully get this first crop of students a great experience, and maybe they'll come back and encourage their friends to go another year.
Yeah, that's the goal.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank both of y'all for coming in today and just sharing with us. Now, I wouldn't be doing my own job if I didn't ask this last question. It has nothing to do with anything we've talked about.
Okay.
We're a radio station, so we're big into music. Okay, so both of you have to give an answer.
Uh-oh.
Favorite musical artist? I ask this of everybody in the faculty spotlight.
Oh. I know mine. Mine's been the same since I was 6 years old.
Uh-oh.
Oh gosh.
Oh yeah, and it happened in part because my mother, what we listened to in the car.
Okay.
But mine's Elvis Presley. I've been a diehard Elvis Presley fan since I was 6. I heard him on the radio for the first time. And I asked my mother. I said, "Who is that?" And she told me, "That's Elvis." And my first CD I ever had,
Sure.
was an Elvis CD.
Wow.
So anyway, that's always my answer
old
because it's
soul.
always been true for me.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. An old soul
Yeah.
historian. I mean, that makes a little bit of
Yeah.
sense. My great grandmother was a huge Elvis fan. Like she would have small pictures of the family, but she had a large picture of Elvis on the wall.
Yeah.
And don't touch that picture of Elvis. And we're not putting a family picture there.
Oh.
That's Elvis's spot.
Well, if you come to my
great-grandmother.
office, any students come to my office, they'll see a few little Elvis little keepsakes in there I have.
Wow. And yourself?
Oh gosh. I don't have an answer ready, so I was listening to Rebekah. Oh boy. I would say since moving here, I've started listening to a little more country music.
Okay, very nice.
A fan of like older country music.
Okay.
So maybe.
So Merle Haggard, Willie.
Yeah, maybe Dolly Parton, just to
Oh,
pick a female
wow.
artist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Dolly.
Can't
And
ever go
Dolly's
wrong with Dolly.
just released a new album.
Oh, did she? Very
Yeah.
nice.
She did. She
Woman
did.
is
And she's just
machine.
an
And
amazing
she's like the first
person.
person to ever release an album in like 7 different decades.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
She's been
impressive.
Leave it
releasing
to
since the
Dolly.
60s.
That's all right.
Can you believe it? Can you imagine just being able to be successful for 7 decades?
No, but
And she's done it in
she
the
can do
entertainment
it.
industry.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
She's a
that's-
pretty amazing.
force.
she
sure
is a force.
Yeah.
And she's been an inspiration to a lot of female artists that just
Mhm.
didn't think they could do it. They just look at Dolly and go, I
Definitely.
can do this. And,
Yeah.
there's so many female artists that come through the countryside that, who was your inspiration? Oh, it was Dolly.
That's
And,
right.
Mhm.
or Tanya Tucker or somebody
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, so not a bad choice.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I like it. Great
Phew.
Dolly
choice.
and Elvis. I mean, I feel like
Right?
I'd want to be friends with us, Caroline.
Yeah.
Come to Europe. Like come to Europe with us.
Right.
Well, we're about out of time. We did go a full hour, ladies.
Okay.
Can you believe that?
Awesome. Well, we had a great time. Thank you for
Yeah,
having
thank
us.
you.
Hey, I appreciate y'all coming in and being a part of our ASU Faculty Spotlight here. And I wish you safe travels when y'all are on this trip.
Thank you.
I wish I was going with y'all. I know it's going to be an amazing trip. Having seen a lot of the places you're going to see, not quite all of them, but a good chunk of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous because I'd love to see them again because when I saw them the first time, it's just like you talked about. I was a quick run through and see what you can.
Yep.
With the exception of the Louvre. I took my time in the Louvre.
As you should.
I took my time because that was the one thing in Europe I just wanted to see. Took my time there. I will say I went to a few other places in like England, like Shannon, Ireland.
Oh yeah.
Well, we have free days for just that, you
Yeah.
know.
Well,
Yeah.
don't let the kids go to Shannon.
No.
Oh, okay.
You might not like the state they come back in.
Oh.
But I had a lot of fun and being able to travel Europe. And I like you said, Rebekah, if you get the opportunity, take it.
Mhm.
It's such an underrated thing.
Mm-hmm.
The travel
Yeah.
and the experience and it really is the experience of a lifetime, I think. And some of these students, it's something they'll look back on. Well, all of these students that go, they're going to look back on the rest of their lives, and the value of what they learned and the experiences they gained and the cultures and things like that.
Yeah.
And I like how you said that about it. You don't understand how other people live in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people look in like just France alone. They say, well, France's people are mean. Well, do you know why? Do you know why? Not that they are mean, but do you know why they seem mean?
Mm.
And when you get there, you understand it. You get it because people. Sometimes as Americans, we don't.
Yeah, it's a different culture.
Yeah.
We're a little
and,
louder.
And we don't want to adjust.
Yeah.
And and it's like when I teach ethics. If I go to Japan, I'm going to bow before I shake hands.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'll still get to shake hand, but it's not my country.
Yeah.
Right.
A quote that I use in my class a lot is, the past is like a foreign country. They do things differently there.
Yep.
So just as, we say the past is a different
I love
culture and a
that.
different time and things are just different, other countries are different, and it's just they do things differently. It's just not like why we do them. It's not a good or a bad or right or a
It's
wrong.
just different.
It's just a difference. And
And
I
I
think
love
exposing that difference is really what is so valuable.
Yeah, I love that. Again, thank you, ladies, for being on. I really appreciate it, and have safe travels. I hope you get the whole 20. I hope you have to extend it to
Yeah.
30.
Me too.
Same.
And again, I appreciate you being here. And if we can ever help you out and get you some information out there, to put your information out there, let us know. We'll do anything we
Yeah,
can
great,
to help.
definitely.
Here
Thank
at
you so
Ram Radio.
much.
Yes, thank you so much.